Welcome back. So over the past week, I kind of went ahead and made some rash decisions with my camera gear. As most of you know, a few months ago switched over to the full Fujifilm ecosystem. I had sold my Canon 6D Mark II, which was my tried and true longtime favorite camera. And my past few videos have really been centric around a few of my smaller cameras and my X-T50, which has been my absolute favorite camera. Well, I decided to make some changes in my setup. And to be perfectly honest, I have not gotten rid of my X-T50. I actually really only got rid of one main camera that I had been using, so you can kind of tell that the video quality here is a little bit different than my past few videos. And there's a pretty solid reason for that. I decided to sell my ZV-E10 because I really wanted to change out of using two different systems for all my videos. And to be fully transparent, I am using my ZV-1F, or actually my fiance's ZV-1F that she uses for some vlogging videos right now, just because my X-T50, as much as I love it and it does shoot the 6.2K 30 frames per second video, it just doesn't have a flip screen, which for me is extremely inconvenient, especially when I'm doing, talking head style videos. And while I could get an external monitor, to be honest, I probably will. I decided to switch over to a camera that, while still a main focused photography camera, has even better video specs than my X-T50. And the X-T50, as I've been doing a little bit more professional work just like in the area, it's an amazing camera. The 40.2 megapixels with the APS-C is absolutely amazing, and to be honest, I didn't want to move away from that sensor. But I was kind of debating, what did I want in my next camera? Did I want to go to the Sony full frame ecosystem and kind of abandon what I had been talking about over my past few videos about loving Fuji? And to be honest, I am more a hobbyist than anything. I do headshots here and there. I do this solely out of my own pocket, and I love photography, and videography is something that I'm definitely getting into more, but I didn't need a video-centric camera. But I figured if I could get my next camera with some better video capabilities, why not? So, even though it does have the exact same sensor as my X-T50, I didn't want to just step up and go to the X-T5, because I feel like the X-T50 and the X-T5, although the X-T5 does have the weatherproofing on it, I was really looking at that at first because of the fact that I like that it had dual card slots. I can do more professional photography, and it's not too much bigger. I wanted something to almost bring me back to my roots with a larger camera. So, very excited to announce that I actually picked up an XH2. From the video standpoint, because just in case anyone's wondering, why did you go with the XH2 over the 2S? Because the 2S is better for video. I know it's an absolute beast, and I was really going back and forth on which one I wanted. But for me, on the X-T50, as my first Fuji camera, it is just such a phenomenal sensor, and I love it. I also didn't want to switch systems because at this point, and I'll definitely talk about more lenses in a later video because I've gone a little bit nuts on my Fujifilm setup overall, I decided to go with the XH2 because I love the 40.2 megapixel X-Trans 5 sensor, and this with the flip out screen is kind of exactly what I wanted. Granted, I couldn't video on this camera and use it to show off the camera, but this camera is just an absolute powerhouse. I will say, and I had read about it a little bit, that when you're doing the hardcore drive, I want to say I had it at like 20 or 30 frames per second. I did freeze it. I had a photo shoot yesterday, and I guess I just went a little bit off, overheated it a little bit, or more so just froze the camera, but it wasn't that big of an issue. Was honestly towards the end of the shoot, and I was able to just pop the battery out, and I did have my X-T50 on me, but I got this camera last week, and it's a powerhouse. That's all I can say about it. And with the 8K video, definitely a little step up from the X-T50 6.2. The viewfinder on this thing, I don't quote me on this, but it feels 10 times better than the X-T50. Like, this camera is just an absolute powerhouse. It reminds me of having my Canon, where I did have, you know, the digital screen on top, or more so, it was like a very old school digital screen. But this camera, I just put it in my hand, and it doesn't feel like my Fujifilm, my X-T50 or my X100T, because they feel much more like hobby style cameras. And while the X-T50, I don't care what anyone says about it, that thing is a packed powerhouse. And I mean, clearly it's not too much of a difference. I mean, it's definitely a lot smaller if you're kind of lining them up beside each other. I also have the grip on it and the 23mm. I'm very excited on this, talk about it later. This camera is just, it feels like a beast. And just when I'm looking through the viewfinder, everything is just so crisp. One thing I was surprised by is that the mechanical shutter is definitely a lot quieter than on my X-T50. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's definitely a little bit quieter versus on the X-T50. It is a much louder, I can actually, definitely a louder click. So it just overall feels like a camera that I can go out and do really anything with. But it also makes me feel a little bit better because I was always hesitant to bring out my X-T50, because with it being the powerhouse of the camera that it is, it was my main camera and I didn't want to mess it up. But you know, the reason I decided to move on from my ZV-E10, I had it with the Sigma 16 1.4. I'm gonna have to buy another one of those lenses because they're just so good. I actually did end up getting one of the Sigma zoom lenses, which is, once again, another video. That thing's just so compact, and I went with that over Fuji because, one, price point, like I said, I don't do this professionally or full time, and it's just, it is so small. I mean, like, I'm gonna pull it out anyway. It's like this lens, like this is a 35 with the lens hood. This is the, you know, 1.4 prime, but this thing is just so tiny. Like, how does Sigma do this? I'll talk more about this at some point, but very excited to start using this camera more. It gives me some more flexibility, not having to take my X-T50 everywhere, but now I can take this everywhere because I always have backup in this one. But the ZV-E10, as good as it was, it didn't have a viewfinder. I do so much daytime work, and when it's bright outside, just relying on that screen, it just doesn't work for me. And while I had debated going to the A7C Mark II or A7CR, I just, personally, I love the feel of Fujifilms. I love the photo, the film simulations. It's the ecosystem I'm so familiar with, and I don't want to have to invest in a bunch of different types of glass. I can for Fuji because I can use them across all of them. I also have a very old XA1, which is cool, you know, but at the same time, you can use all of those X series lenses. If I end up moving on from this at any point, there is going to be a heavy debate of which I go to the GFX system, or if I go to Sony, or Canon for that matter, because Canon's autofocus is just as good these days. And I haven't had any problems with this autofocus on both the XH2 or the X-T50. So sorry, other Fuji users, for your troubles with autofocus. Knock on wood for me, but I haven't had an issue. And to be honest, I like just the way the photos come out. Everybody raves about Fuji for their colors. So check out a few of the photos. This was really like my first photo shoot with it. Went out with a friend yesterday and figured I would just show off some of the initial thoughts. But let me know what you think, and if you have any questions about the XH2, definitely going to start using this for video more than anything, just because with all these different lenses, figured I might as well. So have a great day. Thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't subscribed yet, check it out, click the button, and give me a like if you don't mind. Talk soon. Bye.